You're going to talk about Warhammer, aren't you?
Yes. I like the religion because the gods are players, right? They engage with the world in a way that impacts it.
What about all the good things Slanesh did?
You can get 10 religious people in a room
And get 11 different
and
opinions.
get 11 different opinions.
But the thing is, the people don't fight about differences. They mostly fight about similarities.
If you're going to include religion at all, you can't just have one. In a sense, we always come back to this. It's your core concept for that religion.
Yeah.
Right?
What are they supposed to do in your
Yes.
setting? There was a thing that happened.
Right.
People disagree on its significance.
Yes.
Thus, we have
Yes.
religion, faction, doctrine. It all exists in service of the story. It all exists in service of the world. Hello and welcome to the Worldcraft Club, a show devoted to helping writers, dungeon masters, and other creatives create worlds that will bring their audiences back time and time again. I'm your host, James. I'm joined by Seth and producer Dave. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that is pretty dense. We were asked for it on the server by Obsidian Cross. It's religion, basically. Essentially, how do you create a religion with a sense of differing opinions and doctrines? I think this might be a good time to just generally go through religion creation, though, because it's a pretty big part of human existence. Even if you don't subscribe to like a formal doctrine, most folks have some sense of metaphysics. Even if they're like, well, I don't buy a lot of the supernatural stuff, you might say, but I think life is sacred, or like it's different than rocks. You know what I mean? Like you might have a view that sort of governs some of that. So kind of talking about belief systems and how we make them feel realistic and grounded in the setting, how we evoke wonder and a sense of world building in it. So Seth, what is one of your favorite religions floating around in fantasy that you enjoy?
I have a terrible bias. And that's
Warhammer,
because
isn't
I...
You're going to talk about Warhammer, aren't you?
Yes. I am going to talk about Warhammer. Yeah. So one of my favorite religions in fantasy is really, I mean, it's a sci-fi setting, but it's effectively a fantasy.
Yeah.
Warhammer 40K has a fascinating religion. And the reason it's a fascinating religion is because it doesn't, in the lore, it didn't start as a religion. It started as a sort of sense of human pride. And then the emperor sort of ascends to this status of godhood, and this entire religion is built up around him without necessarily him saying like, hey, let's do this.
Yeah.
And I have always found that the way that religion was constructed just feels really sort of natural, right? Because you have people who are at all different levels in it, right? And they have different understandings of it. And there are different groups inside of it, right? One of the things that I think that the Warhammer 40K universe does really well is factions.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes their the religion of the Imperium so interesting to me is all of the different factions with all of the different beliefs, with all of the different interactions between them, while all of them are still pushing toward the same unified goal, right?
Yeah.
This probably would have fit better in that factions episode we did.
Oh, yeah.
But
well, there's a lot of overlap.
There's a ton of
As I've
overlap.
been thinking about it, factions are a great way to break that down. For those of you who haven't caught the factions episode, a little while ago, we broke down how to create these sort of differing views. And I think doctrinal arguments within a religion would be well broken down with factional thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The other thing
goals.
that they do a really good job of is they do a really good job of clearly identifying what is true and what is not true.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes fantasy religions have a tendency to be very vague, but not in the Warhammer 40K universe. There are people who believe in the Chaos Gods, who are gods, and there are people who believe in the Emperor of Mankind, who is
a real,
essentially
real dude, like
but essentially a god. Right. And because you have these beliefs in these things that the setting says these are real inside the Warhammer 40K universe, these are real, right? You have your chaos gods, you have the Emperor of Mankind, and that gives credence to the expressed belief of the people in the setting, making it more impactful, right? Because the gods aren't just something that exists outside of the setting and have no way of influencing, right? In a sense, I like the religion because the gods are players, right? They engage with the world in a way that impacts it. And then as a visitant, you get to interact with the influence of their power in addition to the people who believe in them.
See, now I think this is fascinating because you're effectively talking about the interaction between lore, established events in history, and then what people believe about them.
Yes.
So and this is the key thing, is what people believe, right?
Right.
Like the whole point of really a metaphysical approach in any situation where you're kind of looking beyond the facts, you're looking for meaning, right? Like that is a lot of the religious impulse kind of is drawn toward why. It's, I understand grandma died, I need to know why. I need to know where she went. I need and meaning doesn't have to be meaning can be getting to a place where you have a peace and an understanding about why something happened, right? Even if you don't always have satisfying answers. And this is where we get to sort of faith element of it. And what's interesting is that what grounds you in the Warhammer sort of Imperium of Man, how could 6 trillion screaming fanatics be wrong?
Right.
You have an event that happened. It was an unusual event. A person effectively ascended into godhood. And as I understand it, has very real material impacts on the world. It's like it is by the Emperor that their ships are able to get around, because he is a beacon in the warp that allows them to get around and find out where
a giant lighthouse.
Yeah. And you're effectively saying there was a thing that happened.
Right.
People disagree on its significance.
Yes.
Thus we have religion, faction, doctrine. And you can see this like in real world examples. You have real historical figure of Jesus Christ. You have people who disagree about his significance and his meaning, but there is an agreement that the person is there. Yep. The question is, what is he to me? Is kind of it. And it's the same with the Emperor in that way.
And just like in reality, there are multiple figures who are sort of shrouded in mystery, right? Or people disagree about their significance or what actually happened to them, right? When you have a setting with that same thing, it makes it really interesting.
Oh yeah.
One of the things that I've said about fantasy settings is that just like you need a good guy and a bad guy, if you're going to include religion at all, you can't just have one. Yeah. It can't just be the deity versus everybody else. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You need balance even in that. Yeah. And again,
like an antagonist.
Absolutely. And so that's where I love, and we can talk all day about whether the Empire of Man is good in any sense. Or not good in any sense. But you have a clear dichotomy between the Imperium, led by the Emperor on the Golden Throne, and the gods of chaos, right? And when a Khornite berserker runs in yelling blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, you know which side of the fence he's on. Right? There's no question about good or bad. Right? So I think that also is a key to having good religions, having a clear sense of, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing?
Yeah.
And then, and this is a little bit of a story trick,
Yeah.
having something that's a good thing, very clearly a good thing, and introducing the rot makes it all the more impactful. Or having something that is very clearly a bad thing, and then introducing the act of charity that makes you wonder, okay, wait,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is an incredibly effective strategy from a storytelling perspective to engage the reader's thoughts and feelings in what you're building.
Yeah.
And so from a world building point of view, having the Imperium of Man, which is on the side of good, but is very corrupt,
Yeah. Yeah.
or having the Chaos Gods are pretty much just chaos.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I can't
They're not
think of
good.
like the
They're pretty much
the
all
Chaos
just bad.
Gods being like, hey, here is a bouquet
well,
of
you know,
flowers.
there's Papa Nurgle.
But what about all the good things Slanesh did?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's not gonna
No,
work. Is
it doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
but
well, I mean, it's
having that shift,
that contrast.
I think.
It's like
Yeah.
one of these things that
Right.
I've been hitting on lately is like, and I think this really comes down to our philosophy, and anybody who's playing their Worldcraft Club bingo will get this. What are you trying to do with the religion that you're making?
Yeah.
What role are they playing in your world, in your story? How are they? Like, are they in there to form an antagonistic relationship? Is it a sort of religious or ecclesiastical bureaucracy that's preventing you from getting a hold of the relic you need to save the world? Is it like, which sounds like a cool book,
does.
like or anything like that? It's what role are they looking to play, and what things are you going to emphasize about them? And I think what's interesting is that then you get that dash of color in there and that contrast, because it's like, it's kind of the Imperium of Man is the most evil organization in the world if you discount everyone else, right? Like, and that's the kind of issue. Is it's kind of, what is it? Democracy is the worst form of government if you discount everything else. And it's like, and that's kind of the issue, is that you're left with sort of like, whose chain swords would I rather be behind? Like,
That's right.
It's like what
No,
it kind of comes down to
exactly
with Warhammer, and that's tricky. And it's like, you know, and that again makes it interesting. You know, it's like, honestly, I think in Warhammer universe, I'd want to be one of the Tau more than anything else. They seem to have it the most together.
I don't know. If you read the lore, it's pretty sketch.
Oh yeah, they get sketchy.
Yeah. There's some speculation. So the Ethereals just showed up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And when they showed up, all of a sudden, all of the Tau were like, well, I guess we're following you.
I guess your point is, at the end of the day, is that no one in Warhammer can just be nice. Like,
Correct.
it's just like, you can't just have like decent people in there, or like friendship.
And
but then that is the conceit of the universe.
Correct.
Though. It is grim dark.
Correct.
It's not
And
supposed
so-
to have sunshine.
So this is a fantastic point. The religions don't just have their own purposes. They serve the core concept of the grim, dark, far future.
Yeah. Yeah, there's very much the Warhammer kind of mentality is, you know, you want to make an omelet, you got to break a few eggs kind of thing. And that's really where the Imperium comes in. And I think it would be blasphemous to say it, but I think if pressed, like, even your most loyal adherents would say, I don't really like the things we have to do. You know what I mean? Like, that's
heresy, and you'd get shot.
Oh yeah, for sure. But it's true. And like, I think deep down they know it. And like, I think
that's heresy.
Yeah, well, fair. But it's, well, I mean, the Emperor is God.
Right.
But that's the kind of, that's an interesting thing. So what we have there is, I think, a general principle.
Yeah.
Which is the first is that it's interesting to have religions that are based on a metaphysical or meaning-based interpretation of a real event.
Yeah.
Like, you had a cataclysm. What does everybody think about it? Religions are going to form about that, and they're going to establish canons, they're going to establish heresies and taboos and things that like mix up with it, because people are going to say, what was the meaning of it? The meaning is that, you know, man was decadent and had, you know, no direction, and then this person came in, and we give our devotion to them because that is from where we take our meaning.
Right.
And so then it becomes, you realize the bounding principles of that really a lot of terrible things can happen, but I need to be focused on this. This is the most important thing to me, in service of the Emperor. This is the most important thing to mankind, kind of mentality. And there you get your 6 trillion screaming fanatics, right?
Right.
Like, and that is how they reason and moralize their way through it. But then you also have something that's very specific to the world, which is grimdark. This is
Right.
part of the ways that these religions serve the world that they're in. So we've kind of got this general principle here
Right.
of just, this whole idea of real events, expanded metaphysics. You have factions in there and shades of color that come into it. You see the Space Marine do something that seems heroic or kind or, any number of those things. But while he is, like bayoneting an orc or something in the middle of
Right.
it, it's like there's that mix. But then it all exists in service of the story. It all exists in service of the world.
Yeah.
And I think those are really the two things that I'd really just say, this is
Yeah.
what makes something distinctly a religion, and this is how you then utilize it.
Yeah. I think there's also an interesting sort of tendency, and I think this has a lot to do with sort of our modern understanding of what a religion is, to treat it in a setting as a codified thing, right? But the reality is that, and anybody who's had any experience with religion understands this.
Oh, yeah.
You can get 10 religious people in a room
And get 11 different
and
opinions.
get 11 different opinions. That's how it works. Because like everything, everybody's got their own personal understanding, even if there is an overarching theology.
So my property, my IP that I think really, really nails religion is Dragon Age. And it's for this reason. Dragon Age is Chantry, which is
Right.
their primary religion. I'm not going to go into the details about it, but it effectively is equal parts loving homage to the Catholic Church and blistering criticism. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of a bit
absolutely.
of both. And
Absolutely.
you can tell that's where they got their
Right.
inspiration from.
Right.
And so like,
Which, incidentally, is also Warhammer 40K. It's a sort of a Gothic Catholicism.
and also Dune.
Yes.
Definitely Dune.
It's pretty astounding the number of fantasy settings that use a sort of a rip on the Catholic Church.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a fascinating organization with a vast history
Yes.
and lots of different, key figures in it that had
Right.
different ideas, and it's following actually the history of that is just fascinating, and that's partly why is you can take a given era of history, much like George R.R. Martin took the War of the Roses and was like, this is interesting, and he got the Starks
Yep.
versus the Lannisters from that. Essentially, you get the same sort of thing when you dive into sort of the
Right.
longer term history of religion, and the Chantry is fascinating because in Dragon Age they have these strong political ties. There's an extent to which their forms and functions being obeyed and adhered to becomes a major plot points at different sectors of it, and it's kind of like it's based upon a historical event that really happened and a person of interest in that historical event, and everybody's different interpretations on it, and you actually find that there are large breaks from them that are different sects
Yep.
that have like different leadership, and the other one doesn't acknowledge the other, and like you meet with people and you see people utilizing the same faith who exhibit characteristics sourced from that metaphysics that are all entirely different.
Right.
One person says, I believe that, according to this scripture and my interpretation of this major event in history, that like freedom is the ultimate ideal. And so I pursue it in this way. And like, there's a character who has a very earthy relationship and says, I feel like the maker in my music and this. Then you get other folks who are very rigorous and scriptural, and you can see how they contrast against each other. But if you didn't know better, you look at them and say, you have more in common than you have,
Right.
separate. But the thing
Yeah.
is, people don't fight about what they don't have. The people don't fight about differences. They mostly fight about similarities.
Because one of the key features of a religion is truth. So we live in a day and age when not everyone believes that truth exists, or at least people don't believe that absolute truth exists.
Yeah.
If you follow a religion, you have an absolute truth.
You have a sense of that. Yeah, like you have a belief.
Right.
There is
There's something that you
Yeah.
believe. Right. And you may, have a sort of nebulous understanding of what it is, but you believe it exists. You think it's a capital T truth. Right.
Yeah.
And so that in a fantasy setting as much as in the real world, that is going to impact how people react to the events around them. That's going to impact what they think about their own actions, other people's actions, about, again, historical events. I think that we often, in the modern world, underestimate how impactful our worldview is on our daily action.
It's our lens.
That's right.
That we interpret things through.
Yeah, and so if you see the world in a particular way, you're going to operate as if that is true, right? So
sometimes unconsciously.
Absolutely unconsciously. So my favorite settings that have religion all include that same feature where people in the setting operate as if they are right.
The thing about making a truth claim is that you believe it's true when you say it. It's like we're as a culture, particularly Westerners, are very good at sort of rationalizing their way into a vortex, and they don't stop and just think, wait, what if the other person actually just believes what they're saying? It's just a difficult thing to do. But we're getting to the part of the show now where I kind of want to nail this down, and I want to figure out some things early on. Like I teased out a couple of different elements of like crafting a good religion. But what would you say are the key takeaways that we want our writers and dungeon masters and storytellers to take away from this?
Decide what's true.
Yeah,
and that doesn't have to be true in the macro sense for your story.
Yeah,
but decide what your people who follow that religion actually believe.
Yeah, so like an example would be all life is sacred. That would be absolutely a truth. And
or let's say you're building a religion in D&D, right? D&D actually has some fantastic examples of this, because every single deity has a little bit of like, this is what the deity is about.
Yeah.
Right? And let's say you're building a druidic circle.
Yeah.
Right? Decide, do they believe in balance? Do they believe that all life is equal? Or do they believe that nature is superior?
Yeah.
Do they believe that nature should be subordinated in and properly stewarded and cultivated?
Yeah.
For man. Are they gardeners, right? Yeah. So right there, you have three drastically different understandings of the world that are going to be based on whatever creeds they follow, that are going to drastically impact the way that group interacts with the players, or with, if this is a novel, with the other people, right? So decide what is true for that religion and for the people who follow it. In a sense, we always come back to this. It's your core concept for that religion.
Yeah.
Right?
What are they supposed to do in your setting?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you set the boundaries.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same as building a whole world, right?
Yeah.
You're just building a micro world inside the bigger world.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say, practically speaking.
Yeah. What is the truth upon which the religion is based? I think some good highlights from this as well are, what role does the religion serve? We have that example of like, are they an order that is preventing your main character from getting a hold of a relic that they need because of some sort of ecclesiastical bureaucracy? You've then got the other thing, which is having a real event and a series of interpretations that ripple from that, I think is fascinating. One cool thing that Dragon Age does is it never tells you what happened. It just gives you ideas about what happened and everybody's interpretation. That's fascinating. That's the wonder element of what we're really looking at.
Right.
With immersion, you can, because you're working with a core concept and a couple of boundaries, that's really freeing. You can then say, well, this religion believes in the sanctity of life and balance, and that means that if somebody kills a deer, I get to kill them, because that's balance. That is one interpretation of balance in there. And so you then have contrast within your druidic circle, and a vengeful group of rangers can exist in there that are at odds with the druids who interpret things differently, right? And it's you get in a lot of interesting elements in that by creating these core concepts and boundaries. So look, I'll close this out here. What are your favorite fantasy religions, dear listeners? What do you think is just the bee's knees that you've seen in the past and you think just nails it? Why do they do it? Write something in the comments. Let us know. What did me and Seth miss? What did we get wrong on this, and how can we do a little bit better with religions going forward? I'd love to, hear thoughts and perspectives on that. That'll about do it for us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a thrilling one. If you want to go ahead and give us a like and subscribe to us on your favorite method of ingesting the show, we would just love to have you do that. It's really, really helpful. A lot of these folks, it's all metrics, and just getting people to know that you like what you hear is a really good way to let us know that we need to keep making more, right? So we'd love for you to do that. So I'm James. That's Seth. What's up, producer Dave? Thank you, editor AJ. And this has been another episode of the Worldcraft Club. Hope you enjoyed. You started recording, didn't you?
Just now.
All right, good. Didn't have that part where I was ranting about how I should be president.